other day, I was visiting a couple friends of mine, Brittany and Nico. They were actually celebrating their firstborn son's first birthday. At the end of the night, Brittany said something that really stuck with me. She said, looking at my son, I now realize that there is nothing more powerful in the world than the love that a parent has for their child. I'm sure that all the parents in the seats today can agree with that sentiment. I mean, it's something so poetic about being willing to sacrifice your life just so that someone else has the chance to live theirs. They say that the most important and critical learning period in a child's life is between the ages of 0 and 6. The irony of that, though, is it's during that exact time frame that parents are teaching their children to be absolutely afraid of everything. I mean, don't go there, slow down, please. For the love of God, take that out of your mouth. It's been on the floor. I don't know about you, but those words sound very familiar to me. I mean, if you asked either of my two parents, they would both unequivocally say between my sister and I was the one that gave my parents the most gray hair, or in my dad's case, no hair at all. And if you don't believe me, allow me to walk you down memory lane with me for just 1 second. It was the day before Halloween, 2003. I was about 9 years old, and my parents were taking my sister and I to a friend of ours' farm for their annual Halloween party. At that point in time in my life, I loved music, loved the arts, loved plays and theater, and I was dressed up as Phantom of the Opera. For those of you that aren't familiar with the play, it's about this guy who has one of the most beautiful voices in the entire world, this mask that covers his scarred face, this big black top hat, and this long black flowing cape. As the night was coming to an end, I was riding the tractor that my friends turned into a hayride for the final time, and my hat flew off while we were riding the ride. Me always being the one that got in trouble, I thought it was a good idea that I go grab it before my parents get mad that I lost yet another toy. As I jumped off the tractor to go grab my hat, my cape got hooked on and yanked me back down in midair. I smacked the back of my head, suffered a severe skull fracture, internal bleeding, and I fell into a week-long coma that almost took my life. My mother retold the story of how the doctors looked her dead in her eye and said that if her baby boy was to ever wake up again, that she would need to find a home to put him in because the trauma to his brain was so severe, he would never be a functional member of society. And she said that after a day of visiting home after home, trying to figure out where she was going to put her baby boy in, she finally got back to my hospital room to find me laying half unconscious, fighting with two nurses. You see, they were trying to give me the IV for my food and water at the time, and I was deathly afraid of needles. And even in that half comatose state, my fight or flight reflex just couldn't leave me. But the thing that was most telling about that story was that she said, instead of me screaming for them to get off of me, all she heard was this faint singing in the background that went, please, get off of me, please. My mother in that moment broke into hysterical tears of joy, and as the nurses looked back at her, thinking that this lady finally lost her mind with all of the stress, she said, no, you just don't understand. My baby boy is in there. I know now that he is going to be okay. I'm sure we can all agree that jumping off of a moving vehicle under any circumstances is a net negative thing to do. But what if I told you that over 2 decades later, after being able to travel the world, after being able to stand on some of the most prestigious stages that the world has to offer, and coming home, representing my country, the United States of America, not once, not twice, coming home a world champion, crowned the best in the world at what it is I do. What if I told you that was after only that I now realize that it is only because I am willing to take that kind of leap in the first place that success finds me at all. And so it's with that sentiment in mind, I offer this question to you. Is taking risk actually risky? Or does the risk lie with those who take no risk at all? Entering the financial services industry, the first thing I was taught was one thing. You cannot save your way to retirement. You have to find a way to make money for you, or in easier terms, invest. So that's why when I saw this article by the Business Insider, I was extremely confused because it said that only 54.4% of American households have a retirement account at all. And of those that do, Fidelity over in 2024 at the beginning said that the average individual retirement account balance was a little over $125 $100,000, less than a tenth of what the average adult American believed that they needed to have in order to feel comfortable to retire. In that study, they said that the leading cause for people not to invest was the fear of loss. They thought they were going to lose their money in the market. And so with the country almost evenly divided between investing is too risky and you don't stand a chance if you don't, I had to try to figure out which side of the coin was actually correct. So I ran a little bit of a study. I went back and I realized this. Investing is very simple. It's not easy. Right? You buy low, you sell high. It means you buy stuff as cheap as you possibly can, and you sell it for the highest possible value that you can find somebody to buy it for. Pretty simple. Just sounds like good business. So what happened if we were one of those unlucky souls that found ourselves in the exact opposite predicament? Maybe we bought high and woke up and we were at rock bottom. So I brought myself back all the way to October 9th, 2007, at the peak of the market right before the '08 crash. And I said, well, what would happen if I put my life savings, $100,000, into the S&P 500 at its peak and didn't wake up until March 9th, 2009, when it finally bottomed out? Well, at that point in time, I would find that $100,000 that I put in, I would wake up and it would be approximately $43,300. I don't know about any of you, but losing almost 60% of my life savings in a 2-year span is enough to give me indigestion, upset stomach, and maybe just a tad bit of diarrhea. Now, seriously, if we took a snapshot of this and we delivered this as proof and evidence as risk is too risky to invest, then we can all unequivocally say that that is absolutely correct. But we all know that wealth is not accumulated in a 1 or 2 year span. It's something that's built over years and years and years of time. So what if we zoomed out that lens just a tad bit longer and we went all the way from 2007 to present day today? Well, in order to do that, I created 2 avatars. I said, well, what would happen if somebody took that same 100,000 and shoved it under their mattress for safekeeping? And because they are diligent and good savers, they opened it up and they shoved $500 in and month out, year after year after year. And then on the other side, what if somebody continued to invest at the very unopportune time in 2007, but through better and for worse, to continue to invest again and again and again through the ups and downs of the market all the way to 2024, who would be better off for it? The numbers that I found in this study were absolutely staggering. You see, the person that simply saved would wake up today and they'd have about $203,000, over double what they started with back in '07, and a far, far cry from that $43,000 that we would have seen in the stock market cross in '09. But the person that continued to be diligent and invest through the thick and the thin would wake up today with over $820,000 in that same account, over 4 times what their previous counterpart would have. And so armed with that knowledge, I now propose to you that same question again. Is taking risk actually risky, or does the risk lie with those who take no risk at all? In case you guys haven't noticed, I'm a guy. And some of my friends might say that I'm a chill guy at that. And all jokes aside, ladies, I love you guys to death, but there is not a single time in my life that I would ever want to switch places with you all, except for one. High school prom season. Listen, the female experience during high school prom season and the male experience are 2 totally different experiences. Ladies, all you have to do is sit back and look cute and wait for one of us to ask you. And if we don't, nobody's even going to know. It's not public record. But for a 15-year-old boy, it is the equivalent of taking your girlfriend to Madison Square Garden at the halftime of a basketball game and asking for her to marry you in the middle of the entire world and not really being too sure that she's going to say yes because you already started dating 2 months ago. Most of the times, we're not even dating anybody in high school. So really, it's like pointing at some random girl in the stands and hoping that she's going to marry you. The anxiety around the whole situation is almost crippling. And honestly, that's why some guys just don't go and they say it's overrated. My friend Tommy is a great example of that. Tommy, he just couldn't get over this fact. He had this huge crush on this girl, Susan. She was kind of cute. And we were trying to orchestrate the whole thing and push him along. Like, go ask her. You got it, man. You got it, man. Not really knowing if she was going to say yes anyway, but that's what we're supposed to do. And eventually he just got so worked up about the whole situation. He was just like, prom is overrated. She probably has a prom date anyway. I'm not even going to go. Fast forward to the day after prom and everybody's posting their prom pictures on Facebook. One of these, maybe another one of these. Gotta get the one with the flower on the chest. And he finds out that she had no prom date at all and simply just enjoyed the night with her friends. Hindsight being 2020, what a missed opportunity that could have been. Now, I did hear this story about this other couple, though. So there was this beautiful young lady. She didn't have a date to the prom as of yet. And much like our friends were trying to push our buddy to ask your girl to prom, they were also playing matchmaker as well. Eventually, the guy that they thought would be a good match mustered up the courage to ask her to the prom, and they had a fantastic night. So fantastic that over 25 years later, they are happily married with 2 beautiful kids. Now, I understand that this, high school sweetheart story sounds like something off of a Hallmark movie, so I don't blame you if you think that I just made it up, just so I could prove my point. But I promise you this is not some fictional tale that I made just to prove my point, because I am simply reenacting the story of how my father met my mother. 2 different young men met with the same exact problem, went about it 2 different ways, and were provided 2 totally different outcomes. So again, armed with that knowledge, I propose to you this question. Is taking risk actually risky? Or does the risk lie with those who take no risk at all? The year is 1972. 5 men are arrested for breaking into the Democratic National Committee's headquarters. President Nixon is the president at the time, serving his term, and not too long after the events, some peculiar leaked documents end up on the front doorstep of the Washington Post. Those documents are actually linking Nixon to the 5 random men that broke into the headquarters. Katharine Graham at the time, the CEO of the Washington Post, is met with an unfathomable decision. Does she go toe-to-toe, head-to-head with what some would argue is the most powerful man in the world at that time, or does she play it safe, shelve the story, never to be heard from again? Against the advice of all of her counsel, she decides to run the story and finds herself dead on in a reenactment of the story of David and Goliath. To let you know how far outside of her depth she was, the papers union orchestrated a strike against the Washington Post. Her employees were beat up, her equipment was destroyed, and one of her paper mills were burned to the ground. At one point in time, they were losing $300,000 a day in marketing revenue. That's enough to make that 60% that we lost in the stock market sound like we just pressed the button one too many times on the Black Friday Amazon deal. People were selling away the stock like it was hotcakes, so they thought the company was going to go belly under. And in her time of most desperate need, she did something unthinkable. She remained bullish on herself, used the company's money to buy as much of their own stock as they possibly could, doubling down on her decision. And much like the story of David and Goliath, that singular stone that she cast struck her opponent true and found her victorious. Those leaked documents that ended up on her doorstep would go down in history as one of the most important papers in history, known as nothing other than the Pentagon Papers. And that story that she ran would be known as nothing other than the infamous Watergate scandal. Nixon would step away from his term in office. And if that wasn't good enough for all of you, that stock that she bought would make the Washington Post billions of dollars and put them in a position to buy out one of their competitors, the Star, cementing her as one of the greatest CEOs in American history. So, armed with that knowledge, once again, I propose this question to you. Is taking risk actually risky? Or does the risk lie with those who take no risk at all? As my time on this stage comes to its final end, I pray you allow me to leave you these parting words, my friend. I mean, if Moses never answered God's call and never parted the Red Sea, would there really be any trace of our humanity. I mean, if Martin Luther King denied the fact that he ever had a dream, would there ever be a stage that accepts somebody that looks like me and my team? I mean, if a bird decided that it was too risky to fly, could it ever really escape a predator's lurking eye? I mean, I'm sure we can all agree that an alligator isn't a smart thing to fight, but if Muhammad Ali could teach us a thing or two about answering the call when opportunity knocks on our door just to have the chance to become something more. I mean, I know I can sound like a broken record at times, and you probably weren't expecting me to break out in rhymes, but please forgive me for the thing that I'm trying to impress upon all of you. Is that taking no risk at all is quite literally the riskiest thing you could ever do. Thank you.